Okay. I think we'll give it just 1 second and then we'll go ahead and get started. Um, I just want to say, first and foremost, a big thank you to everyone who's joined us today. This is the IVCSD Budget Town Hall, where we're here to take input from the community, from you, on your great ideas, suggestions, and goals for the Isla Vista community. We're really lucky that even though we are physically distant during these really challenging times, we can still do what we can to be a participatory government and live out those values of engagement through the internet. So thank you for joining us on Zoom. Thank you for joining us on YouTube Live. We appreciate your participation, and we will look forward to hearing it later in the meeting when we have a little bit more of an open discussion. I want to start off by thanking first our staff, Jonathan and Deborah, for putting this together, and our wonderful team of interns who've been out there spreading the word about this town hall, and also give a thanks to Bob Geis, who is the vice president at the Community Services District Board of Directors and also on our finance committee. We have been meeting alongside with Ethan Bertrand, another director who will be joining us very shortly over the past couple of weeks and last month, putting together the draft budget for 2020-2021. So I want to just give Bob an opportunity if he has anything he wants to say before we get started with the presentation about what our budget looks like this year. And just again, thank you all so much for being here.
The only thing I would thank is any of the participants that are joining us. It's nice to get that participation, and we welcome your comments.
Great, thanks, Bob. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. Is everyone able to see the screen, the budget town hall?
Yes.
Someone trying, yes? Okay, that's great. So first, I just want to begin with a little bit of an overview of our revenue estimates. I think that I want to preface it by saying that we as a local government are in a extraordinarily, I think, lucky position. Many of local government agencies across the country right now are feeling the ramifications of COVID-19 and the economic downturn that is going to put a strain on budgets at the local, state, and federal level. I'm really thankful that the CSD, our revenue projections are at the moment looking solid. We are projecting that we will take in $936,000 next year from the utility user tax. Utility user tax is an 8% surcharge on Isla Vistans utility bills. Not all utility bills, it's gas, water, trash, electric, and sewage bills. And that will collectively, we believe, bring in around $900,000. Additionally, since the beginning of the district in 2017, we have had a partnership with the University of California, Santa Barbara, that where they contribute $200,000 towards mutually agreed upon programs. That right now includes a number of safety programs that we'll talk about later in the presentation. Additionally, we really want to thank the UCSB associated students who this year have provided us with a grant in order to run the operations of the Isla Vista Community Compost Collective. Community Compost Collective is a really awesome program that was quote unquote homeless for the time being when they ran into some issues last year and had to pause operations. But before that, they had really been, I think, a model for student engagement and student activism. Their efforts made it so that they were actually able to compost 8 tons of food waste over the 2 years that they were in operation, and we're really happy to have found them a home in partnership with Associated Students. Additionally, there's a rollover fund balance, which is a little bit technical, but essentially it's just carryover from last year that's already designated to specific programs. Some of the areas that we have broadly of spending are public safety, community planning, public works, parking, community programs, and rental housing mediation. Some of these categories are specific, some of them are broad, but I think as you go on, you'll find that just about everything we do, or exactly everything we do, fits into one of these categories. Some of our ongoing programs include the Isla Vista Community Center and Community Room. Since 2017, we have had a partnership with the county where we operate the Isla Vista Community Room. It is a space that under normal circumstances, unfortunately it's shut down right now due to COVID, but is a space that can be scheduled by student groups, nonprofits, individuals for whatever types of needs that they need in sort of a conference room style setting. That includes, we have a number of community meetings there, but there are also over the past year have really been a lot of other types of programming too, such as exercise classes, Zumba classes. We've had computer literacy classes in that space as well. And we're really excited next year to be able to expand that programming into a larger space, which is the Isla Vista Community Center. You'll see on the slide here at the bottom, there's a photograph of the big blue building that we have. It sits at the bottom of the loop. Really want to thank the County of Santa Barbara, which through our partnership with them and through their leadership was able to renovate this building, which for many years had sat vacant, and turn it into a space that we are now really excited at activating. Before COVID started this year, we had a number of programs already taking place there, including Jeffrey's Jazz Coffee House, which I'm sure many of you were in attendance for. I think that is a really good preview for what's to come in the community center. The rental housing mediation program is something that the Community Service District in Isla Vista, we're the only community services district in the state of California with the power to operate a program like this. What it does is it provides a third-party neutral mediator that helps tenants and landlords, or tenants and tenants, resolve issues that occur. So this could be anything from landlord-tenant issues that we hear about that are common, such as security deposit disputes, such as maintenance disputes, questions about who's responsible for what when it comes to things like landscaping, for example, but also, especially in the era of COVID-19, this really does extend to roommate issues as well. The more that people are in close quarters staying at home, the more that some of these tensions seem to arise. And one of the services we're really excited about the mediator being able to provide in this current climate is the ability to make sort of a roommate agreement around stay-at-home order COVID-19 house rules, so that housemates are on the same page and can get some of those issues that we've been hearing about out in the open and hopefully resolved. I will mention again that is a completely free program, and if you would like to sign up for that, or if you know anyone who could benefit from that, go to our website at ilavistacsd.ca.gov, and that'll be later on in the presentation, the web address. We also run the Isla Vista Safety Station program. This is a collaborative between UC Police Department and the Community Services District that puts non-sworn student officers out in the community on Friday and Saturday nights at specific locations. There's one at Little Acorn Park on El Embarcadero, and one on Del Playa, right at the end of the 6-6 block. These are tents where the CSOs are stationed, and the CSOs are really there to be a resource. On one hand, they can help walk someone home if they're not feeling safe, or if they just want a buddy to walk home with. They can also help you charge your phone, get some water, just normal things that folks could benefit from on a Friday or Saturday night. We've also seen the CSOs have really, I think, been one of their real benefits of them has been that they provide a bridge between law enforcement and students. We know that not all public safety problems require a sworn law enforcement officer with a badge and a gun to solve. And when we can put student officers in these situations, even if it's just for communication purposes to help channel concerns of safety that are coming up in the community during Friday and Saturday nights, I think that's a big win. And it's really, one of I think, a model that could be extended to college campuses throughout the country. So we're really proud of that. We also contract with UCPD for an interpersonal violence investigator. You'll see her photo on the presentation. Her name is Kavina Avila, and she is a strong advocate for survivors of sexual violence. Under this program, we employ a single investigator model, which is really based on being trauma informed in our investigations. We've heard from survivor resource advocates that one of the main impediments to survivors of sexual violence coming forward is the thought that they will have to tell their story and retell their story and retell their story to many different people throughout the investigatory process, re-traumatizing themselves in the process. So our philosophy with the Isla Vista, or the interpersonal violence investigator, is to try and make it as easy as possible to report, because we know from empirical studies that fewer than 1 in 10 sexual assaults that take place are reported in any manner at all. And that's just really unacceptable to me. And I think it's really unacceptable to our board, and should be unacceptable for our entire community. So with our partnership with UCPD, we've seen some success with increasing the reporting that's taking place. Additionally, we run the Isla Vista Community Garden that's at the Methodist Church that's on 66 block of Sueño. That's a partnership between us and the UCSB Sustainability Department. We have been really excited to just see that space, which is unused land on the Methodist Church property, or was unused land on the Methodist Church property, and has now grown into a bountiful collection of herbs, all sorts of different things, vegetables and fruits. I think there's even some corn there. It's just been really awesome to see that space grow. And so that's a partnership that we hold with them. I mentioned the Isla Vista Compost Collective, which we hope to resume operations in the near future once we are further along in the phased reopening of our society. But really, just again, big ups to the students who brought this program forward and were able to start a program without really, a whole lot of help from institutions like local government or, the university or anything like that. They just came up with this program, started handing out buckets to their friends, teaching them how to compost, collecting that compost, and really grew their program to serve almost 200 households. So we're hoping that success can really be expanded on. My vision really is that every house in Isla Vista knows how to compost, and it's easy for them to compost. And I really think that that's something that we can move towards now that we are all working together under our banner. Lastly, I think a program that I'm most proud of because of its both practicality at solving an important community problem and its investment in social justice is the Isla Vista Beautiful program. Under this program, we employ, through a partnership with the United Way, a number of formerly homeless or veteran community members, and they work in our community to make it more beautiful. That means going out and abating graffiti when it exists in the community, painting over graffiti, to pulling weeds and doing landscaping tasks on and around our sidewalks and community facilities. The way that they know where to go in order to solve these problems is that we have an app, which I would encourage everyone to download, which is called See Click Fix. On the See Click Fix app, we are able to submit or take a picture of an issue that exists, whether it's a pothole in the street, or whether it is a graffiti that is on a sidewalk or on a fence. You take a picture of it, you type a description of what the problem is, and it's submitted to our Isla Vista Beautiful staff. And then it goes in their triage of issues to tackle. And then once it is resolved, you'll get a little notification on your phone saying that the graffiti has been taken care of, or whatever issue it is that you submitted. So would really encourage everyone to download that app, and it's called See Click Fix. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next slide. In this year's budget, we have a number of discretionary programs. First is a community policing fund. So this is really a fund that we had over the last year as well, which we are able to see some success in. Another thing that I'll mention later on, which is the law enforcement, or the public safety communications intern position. But the community policing fund is really meant to be an investment in community-oriented policing programs. It's based on the philosophy that we cannot ticket or cite our way to a safer Isla Vista. We need to invest in community buy-in and restorative justice as a way to achieve safety. So there's $30,000 in the budget, and that's sort of on like a grant basis for that. And that's discretionary, which just means that it's money that the board has the authority over how it's spent, whereas the other revenue in the budget is designated towards programs that exist. We have a special projects fund, which is very general. It really is just a fund for different projects that come up in the community. One such example of a special project that we funded in the past is the Isla Vista Community Garden at the Methodist Church site. So there's just an example of what that type of fund would be used for. We have the parking alternatives promotion. And so this is money that, and I'll talk about this a little later, for something that's in our budget, which is the parking and transportation study. And this is money specifically to promote that and engage our community, because we know that with anything transportation and parking related, we're not going to be able to try to solve that problem without having a lot of community engagement, both from like a quantifiable level, but also from a more open-ended level as well. So we also have a fund for infrastructure, lighting, street trees, sidewalks, and gutters. This was something that was in our budget last year, and we did not end up having to use it because we actually were able to negotiate a partnership with the County of Santa Barbara. They made a number of investments in our street lighting grid, and actually were able to fully fund out of the county reserves 36 new streetlights in Isla Vista. We've heard from community members and from associated students, specifically the Associated Students EVPLA office, that lighting is a big issue in Isla Vista. It's a public safety issue for people feeling safe walking home at night, but it's also an issue in terms of people need to be able to see where they're going, if they're on a bike or on a skateboard. And so through that partnership, we were able to install new streetlights. And this fund is really, the goal is to try and find creative street lighting solutions, such as solar street lighting, such as down lighting, potentially lighting in some of our parks. And that's what that money is specifically for, rather than sort of traditional telephone pole style street lighting. And last is the Public Art Fund. We're hoping that we can try and make our community a little bit more beautiful with some murals, with other sorts of installations. I'm not the art major, I'm not the art expert, so we're really looking for community proposals on something like that. And we'd especially love your input on specific art things that we can do for the community. Potential pilot programs for 2020. So the board has actually sanctioned this first one, which is the Isla Vista Foot Patrol media intern. we've heard time and time again that law enforcement needs to do a better job of communicating with residents. There's a number of new programs that they have that I think are really innovative, including the Isla Vista Restorative Justice Program, which effectively diminishes the cost or the fee associated with many different tickets that are commonly given out in Isla Vista, such as minor and possession tickets, drunk in public tickets, and noise ordinance tickets. But we need to do a better job of communicating those programs to the community. The same thing goes for when there are active threats to the public or things that they should know about. We're hoping that a media intern will be able to sort of bridge that gap between the public safety side of law enforcement and the communication side of what the community needs. Additionally, the Isla Vista Community Plan. So Isla Vista currently does not have an authorized community plan. There was a master plan that was worked on over the period of a number of years by many members of our community, in a process that was really led by the county and the county's planning department and the redevelopment agency at the time. That was over 15 years ago, and the plan was never adopted because of a number of issues that got tied up bureaucratically. We're hoping that we're at a place right now where because we have more fully, I think, developed institutions in Isla Vista, we can really put the community in the driver's seat to build a community plan that works for everyone and tries to solve some of these difficult issues that we have, such as transportation and such as parking and such as housing. So that's what that potential program is. Parking and transportation study, that really ties in together, I think, with planning. And it's something, as the community services district, we do have the power to restrict and regulate the way that on-street parking is done. So I think those two really go hand in hand. Lastly, the 2020 Spring Community Festival. I think this is something that I've been really passionate about on the board, is that when it comes to large events that happen in Isla Vista, particularly Deltopia, we need to figure out a way to make those events more safe and preserve their fun atmosphere, while also acknowledging that there are many, many public safety issues that occur during Deltopia weekend. There are assaults, both physical and sexual assaults, that occur every year. Many of our community is ticketed and arrested in really a police state atmosphere that takes place. And there's no central authority on Deltopia. It's sort of just a spontaneous thing. And that's one of the things that make a lot of people really enjoy the event. But we want to take that spontaneity and that creative energy and channel it into a community-sponsored festival where it will be fun and it's organized so that we can reduce the law enforcement presence that's required for those weekends and come up with a safer event in general. So that's another potential program that we have that many of you were probably involved in the discussions about this last year. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do the pilot program this year because of COVID-19, but we're keeping our eye out for, if that's going to be something where our society is reopened to a point where we can have large events in 2021 with that. So there's potential for that. So that's about it. I'm going to sort of stop talking now. I think I've really laid out there a lot of our different operations and goals. And really the purpose of this town hall is to hear from you about what it is that you want. Many of you will have filled out the budget priorities survey that we submitted, and we really appreciate your feedback on those different items. But I really would just want to have an open forum discussion on some of the different things that we can affect. And our budget committee, I can tell you, is all ears. We want feedback, and we want your input to try and make the 2020-21 budget as good as it can possibly be. So I don't know if there's any orderly way to do this on the Zoom platform, but I would say if anyone has the chat box open if you want to just drop something in the chat to say like that you'd like to raise your hand or press the raise hand button. I can sort of call on you from there. So thanks again, everyone. And if you have any questions for me, also feel free, again, drop something in the chat box, or you can also raise your hand or unmute yourself and just say something as well. Floor is totally open.
I think it was a really good presentation, and I'm really glad that we're working toward the goals. One example I said in the chat was easy compost access, but yeah, pretty much a ton of stuff you're working on is really amazing goals. So thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Appreciate your comments. Maybe it'd be easier if we started in a more structured way. If we started out by talking about community center programs, this can include community center, but also the Isla Vista community room. One of the things that isn't mentioned in the presentation is that we do have a partnership that we're building with the Goleta Valley Library to provide library services in the community center and community room twice a week. And so that's an example of some new programming that we are considering. And if anyone has ideas or suggestions for what sort of programming would make them want to use the space, that's definitely something we're looking for. We've also talked a little bit about exercise classes that already exist, but I'm sure people have other ideas for what they'd like to see in the space. So if anyone has anything, feel free to jump in.
Hi, can you hear me, Spencer?
Yes, I can, John.
Yeah, I tried about 6 different ways. As you know, and Jonathan know, that some of us in Vista are very interested in participating to the degree possible with community budgeting possibilities. And so we're kind of looking for the ways and means in which a community organization can make a proposal for budget for next year.
That's a great question. Thank you for that, John. We are going to have a grant process that we're going to be releasing that includes how you would go about doing that. But I would love to speak with you and with our general manager, Jonathan, who is on here as well, to help you navigate that process once we put it out. And we really appreciate all the work that Vista is doing. I've really enjoyed joining your town hall last quarter, and I know it's still going on virtually, those discussions. So let's definitely have a conversation about that.
Beautiful, thank you.
Also open it up to other ideas that are here on the list. Improving public safety. I'm wondering just in general if anyone has feedback on if they feel like public safety is going in a positive direction or a negative direction in our community. This is something we struggle with a lot in terms of trying to gauge. We have certain metrics that we can gauge with, including how many arrests are taking place, how many medical transports are happening. but also we want to hear anecdotally from the community what their feelings are as well on something like public safety. Additionally, if you have any program ideas for things that would improve safety, we want to hear that too.
Yeah, Spencer, this is Ethan Bertrand here. Sorry to join you all a little bit late, but I'm glad to be on the call. And at our last board meeting, we received our presentation from the UC Police Department on the Isla Vista Safety Station program, where we have community service officers in the parks on weekend nights to provide assistance to residents. And I think that program's been going really well. We've seen a lot of positive benefits, both on the safety side, but also just helping residents with simple things like getting water or getting their phones charged. And I think this has been a great partnership with UCPD and also the Park District. And I'm excited for how we could potentially expand it to additional locations. Right now, we're obviously at Little Acorn Park and Window to the Sea Park, but there's other locations in the community that could probably benefit from coverage. And I think it's been really positive, especially since it uses community members and involves Isla Vista residents in promoting public safety, which was one of our goals.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your work on the budget committee helping us put this together. I definitely share your enthusiasm for that program, and really think that it's a model that deserves to be expanded.
Thank you.
One thing that I noticed, at least anecdotally, on the survey that community members submitted was that there was a lot of discussion about what we can do to make Isla Vista a, let's say, a cleaner and nicer place, really beautifying Isla Vista. And I mentioned that we've got the Isla Vista Beautiful program, and I'm curious to hear if that's something that is of community concern or priority, that people have suggestions on, or if there are specific, that really ties, I think, a lot into infrastructure as well. And I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts they'd like to share on that.
That reminds me of something I wanted to bring up. A lot of my friends are talking about art spaces. I don't have any more details, but yeah. Jess, do you?
No, not many more details, but I did notice that public art was like a priority. So that's like a fund that we could potentially apply a proposal to, I'm guessing.
Yes, that's correct. And we'd love for proposals for that. And like I said, I'm not the art expert. Maybe we have some art experts on our board. I think probably not though. So we would love community input and proposals. And I mentioned murals. That's an idea that's been talked about a lot in the past, but art is not just murals. It's also different types of, spaces like Ash mentioned. So we'd love to receive proposals for something related to that.
Spencer, is it okay if I add on? So I'm wondering, is there a way to kind of bridge these different subject areas? So like public art and the IV kind of community plan. Like I'm thinking of wayfinding, which is something that has been brought up in the past. I know Melissa at the food co-op is really passionate about that. Like, could this be part of a larger proposal that touches on many different kind of areas of need or interest? Is that ideal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that wayfinding is in its way its own art. I've seen many different ways that it's been done. I'm sure we can come up with something that's very artsy and creative. So yeah, and you're right that all these different areas, especially with infrastructure, planning, beautification, art, they all sort of tie together.
Cool, thank you.
Another thing that we've been noticing, and I touched on this a little bit beforehand, is that in the era of COVID-19, there are a lot more issues that are arising on the housing side when it comes to issues between tenants and landlords. We, as a result of COVID, have essentially shut down our economy and told working class people that they still have to pay rent, even though they don't have a source of income in many cases, which I think is really unfair. And I think that the mediation is a route that many of our tenants could go in order to try and resolve some of those issues, or even just broach the conversation with their landlord about not being able to pay rent. And so I know one of the topics that's on here is raising awareness for the mediation program. And I guess I do want to take a pulse from people if they were aware of the mediation program, or if it's something that they see themselves or other people they're close with potentially utilizing.
I'll speak up. I think it's a great program. I'm just wondering, is there any background data on just how utilized that program was, like since its introduction to the community?
Yeah, great question. So that data exists. I don't have it in front of me. I can tell you anecdotally that I think it's a really underutilized program, and that one of the reasons why we have raising awareness on here is because we would like to grow the utilization of the program and just the awareness that it exists to begin with.
Thank you.
I would recommend it because I heard you have a lawyer or something, or somebody that knows about it. Or who do you hire?
So
I guess I don't know that much.
Great question. No, and I think you do know a lot. We have a partnership with the Santa Barbara Legal Aid Foundation, and so through there we have a lawyer who is experienced in mediating housing issues, and she is the one who handles the different mediation cases. One of the big challenges that we have, like I mentioned, is just awareness of the program and getting people to know that mediation and being able to talk some of these issues out is an option that they even have. I've heard of many times while I've been in school here where there's a housing issue, say a landlord is not giving all of the security deposit back. And, thankfully there's one person in a group of 10 living there that has a mom or a dad that's a lawyer and is able to force the landlord's hand because of that. That is not the situation that the vast majority of people in Isla Vista are in, though. And mediation is supposed to be a step that comes before you would go to something like a small claims court to try and work these issues out in a mutually beneficial way. So definitely we would enlist all of you in helping spread the word about that program, especially now. And you can find more information about that on our website at IVCSD.com.
Yes, and this is Ethan here. I definitely agree with you, Spencer, and those who have spoke up. This is a very valuable program. And I think that with all of the, obviously year-round rental housing, there's a lot of issues, but with COVID-19, there's a lot of fault lines that have been exposed. And I think that this will be beneficial to tenants and landlords as we do move into this next season of people signing new leases, people moving out of apartments, and there being security deposit issues. I think we can really be a great resource to the community. So I'm grateful for our staff's efforts to raise awareness and just make this more and more accessible. And then going back one step to where we were just discussing the IV Beautiful program, I think that has been an amazing partnership and has really been an example of what we can accomplish by working together with underrepresented communities. Because, through that program, we give people experiencing houselessness a meaningful job to help beautify our community and serve our community. and I would love to see us expand it. I think it provides a great service to the residents. I think it provides a great service to those who are employed by it, and it's really an awesome way for us to empower people who are doing great work in our communities.
Thank you, Ethan. I also want to just open it up in general to just general ideas that people have to improve our community. At the top of this presentation, I listed off the different program areas that we have as the community services district. But one thing that's not really included in that is that we really want to be a voice for the community. That's actually in our vision statement, is to be a voice by Isla Vista. And so we really want to hear, just in general, if there are issues or improvement ideas that you have for the community, whether it's something that we directly have sort of jurisdiction over or not. We're really curious just to have a discussion about that as well.
So Spencer, Ethan here again. One thing that I'll mention, and this is something that I've been working with Director Freeman on a bit, is just continuing to improve sustainable transportation options in Isla Vista. I'm really into the different vehicle sharing programs that are increasing in use throughout the state and in communities like ours, such as bike share, which unfortunately has been lost in Isla Vista, as well as scooter share, and also car share. And one thing that I've been collaborating with some colleagues on is trying to imagine and see what can be done with bringing an electric vehicle car sharing program to Isla Vista. It's something that we've been in touch with Zipcar about, and reaching out to some other agencies that work in this area to see how we can reduce the need to have an individual car in Isla Vista, and also replace that with an opportunity to commute in a way that's clean and respectful of our environment. So I think that's just one example, but whatever we can do to continue to increase sustainable transportation options.
Thank you, Ethan. That sounds like a really cool program proposal. I know I myself have used Zipcar in the past, which doesn't have any electric vehicles, but I think could be really a model of car share that's worth expanding. It is, I think, really difficult. I think a lot of our residents, if they had the means and the ability through a robust public transportation network, through car share and through bike share or other small last mile modes of transportation, if people had that, they would be more likely to go car free, and we would be able to reduce the number of cars in Isla Vista and really make it into the eco-conscious paradise that I think would be reflective of what people's values are. And so I think it's really important that we try and move towards something like that, because the reality is that so many of our residents do bring cars to Isla Vista. And I think that many of those folks that bring cars in just do because they need to be able to get from where they previously lived to Isla Vista. And we have a number of services in our community that would make it to where you don't really have to use a car that often. I know I have a car here, but at times we'll go weeks on end without driving it because we have excellent grocery stores in the community. We have banks in the community. We have restaurants and food places. So I think that that's definitely something that we should all be thinking about. Okay, so I'll put out sort of a last call if there's any other ideas that anyone wants to throw around or feedback for our budget proposal. You've got all three of us from the budget committee joining you here right now live, and we we will be taking your feedback into consideration before we submit a final recommended budget to the full board of directors. We'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks here. So any other feedback you have, we'll just open it up for a last call on that.
Spencer?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm wondering if anybody on this call, if there's interest on anybody's part in, I guess it would be reviving the idea of an Isla Vista newsletter project, which could in fact, tie a lot of things together and cause a lot of awareness of all these great programs and do all kinds of good things if there was will and means and possibility to do that.
It's a great question. Is there anyone on the call with interest in something like that?
This is Ethan here, and I absolutely love that idea. I've wanted to see a daily paper and IV for a long time. I mean, as a government agency, I don't know that we can have that as a program of ours, but as an ally in community building, I think that's a fantastic idea. And anything that we can do to support that and other community building initiatives, I love. That's a fantastic idea.
That's great.
Something me and some other people I know have been thinking about is how in Eco Vista and some other community groups, but yeah, in Eco Vista, we keep constantly thinking of all these great ideas, and we do some of them, but we don't have the means to do all of them. The newspaper idea, the art spaces, like what if we could have a space that was a maker space sometimes, right? Or at least pop-ups. We have so many great ideas. So we're thinking about what if we could fund one person to get paid to find solutions to turn more of our ideas into jobs and like create local jobs that benefit the community, like you've already been doing with the beautification and everything else.
That's a really interesting idea. So someone who is like sort of a project manager type position?
I think that title would make sense, yeah, because they could help with everything that EcoVista is doing, but also like look for more funding so that we can pay more people to do it, because people have already been doing this great work on a volunteer basis, but that's not like sustainable and inclusive because some people can't afford to spend time if they can't get paid for it. So I don't know.
Yeah, so this is Ethan here. I think you mentioned a number of good ideas, and as Spencer mentioned earlier, like for specific projects, I think it's great to submit a grant request and for us to consider that, whether that's like for an art project. You mentioned before like creative spaces, and that's one of the things I really want to see in the Isla Vista Community Center. But one other thing I'll mention is we've included in our budget funding for a grant writer. And I think that this grant writer will be, or I'm not sure that it'll be one grant writer or it'll be part of our staff time, but whatever our grant writing focuses on will be to bring additional resources to the community for various needs. And we definitely encourage community groups, organizations, our partners to encourage us and to give us suggestions for what types of grants we should be going for, what we should be looking for as far as additional resources.
Thank you for that, Ethan. I think I tied it together pretty well. The last thing I'll say on grants is that because it's really the grants are the way that we as a local government can sort of leverage the resources that are all around us from the state, from the county, from the federal government to try and do bigger and better things. and collaboratively we'll definitely be continuing to work with other agencies such as the county on grant opportunities that come up. One that we're involved in right now is the Alternative Transportation Program grant. That's a state grant, and we're working with the county to try and craft that proposal and generate community engagement for some of the improvements that would be potentially undertaken by a grant like this. The improvements would include things like sidewalks, potentially new sidewalk lighting to try and make it safer and easier for pedestrians and bicyclists to use the infrastructure in Isla Vista. As many people know, infrastructure is one of the biggest costs that government has just because it is so expensive to build and maintain roads, sidewalks, lights, street trees, gutters, things like that. And so that's definitely a way that we're looking at using grants as well.
Wow, I'm glad to hear you're working on something. Let me mute my phone. I'm glad to hear you're working on something with the sidewalks. Wow. Cool. And the thing my friends want to do with the sidewalks is put a few food plants next to them. So I wonder if while we're rebuilding them to be better, we could also plant some food.
That is a great idea. And I'll definitely make sure that we jot that one down. The sort of edible environment idea is something that I think is totally in line with a lot of what our partnership is that exists with the Methodist Church and UCSB Sustainability for the Community Garden. And I've heard about sort of the UCSB edible campus idea, but I never really thought about how that could play out with new sidewalks in Isla Vista. So thank you for that suggestion. We'll definitely be I'm going to ask some questions about that, see if we can pursue that.
Okay. Well, an exciting resource is one of our members has been spending a bunch of time researching like what lots are not being used and what corners is there just no development. And so I would probably have him put in a proposal. It would have a lot of details maybe.
That's great. Yeah, thanks. We'd love to take a look at that research. Okay, so with that, I'll go on sort of to our last slide, unless anyone has anything else. We just want to invite everyone to continue to stay in touch, and we want to stay in touch with you. First way is through our website, ilavistacsd.ca.gov. That's a one-stop shop for all information about us, everything from the different programs we run, signing up for things that we talked about today, like mediation, and also updates from the board and our committees. We also have social media presence on Facebook and Instagram. We encourage you to follow us there. We have a phone number that we can be reached at as well. And during normal times, this is our address, Embarcadero Del Mar 970, which is at the Isla Vista Community Resource Building. Our staff is fully working from home due to the COVID crisis. However, that's just where we're generally located. So we really appreciate everyone's participation today. If you need to follow up with anything, I'm gonna throw up my email address before we leave. But again, just thank you everyone for your participation, and thank you to our staff for helping put this together. And we look forward to hearing from you all soon.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Quick
you.
question, what's the meeting tomorrow like?
Great question. So tomorrow at 6 p.m. we have a board meeting. That's just a meeting of the entire board of directors where we make decisions. It's a little less engagement oriented. However, we do have public comment periods for every item. And we'll be discussing a number of things, including the COVID-19 response and the beginning of safe reopening or phased reopening for our community, and a bunch of other things. So definitely you can tune in here on YouTube Live at the same exact place, just 6 p.m., which exactly 24 hours from now. So we'd love to have you there for that as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna
Good job,
drop my
everyone.
email in here.